couple of armchair GMs who have yet to be wrong with any of their Timberwolves takes. Right. It's Flagrant Howls with Phil Mackey and Kyle Theige.
I know you guys are wondering, where have these guys been? Why have they not been, our audience is wondering, much like the Timberwolves fans, wondering about Karl-Anthony Towns. What is the status? What are these cryptic Kyle tweets that keep being sent out? Mackey's been holding me back. The Score North training staff has been holding me back.
I felt like the Timberwolves because I tweeted out on Monday that I was obviously on vacation last week, and I was like, no podcast today, but we will do one later this week. And then we just totally didn't do one this week, and felt just like Wolves PR tweeting out injury updates. Like Anthony Edwards is questionable. He has 1 foot. The other one is firmly entranced in a boot, but he's questionable. Just kidding, he's not going to play. So weird week. Probably one of the worst weeks. I mean, we're going to get into various topics, but 3-game losing streak at the wrong time. All difficult games. The Celtics are good. The Bulls game was the most defeating loss I've experienced in years, and then the Raptors
it
game
looked like the Raptors game was like bound to happen. I think the frustrating thing about the Bulls game, among a million other things, is that you knew that like the next night on a back-to-back was going to be almost impossible, anyways.
Yep. And
to get that close, and like God, you're up, and Taurean Prince just kind of loses his mind with a pass, and you have a chance. What was it, like 20 seconds left or something? You have a chance to go up by 3, or maybe kick it out, hit a 3, go up by 4, and now the game's probably over, and boom, the Bulls are running back the other way. No pun intended. And then you fly to Toronto to just get waxed. So I think, all right, this is...
Where do you want to start?
You didn't finish. You didn't finish your sentence. You were going to say this is one that you said like this week was one of the, and then you stopped. I think you were maybe going to say one of the worst weeks in Timberwolves history, but then you remembered the 30 years before this year.
Right.
And it's tough to put it in, one of the worst weeks in Wolves history, but, the landscape is bleak. They are hanging on for dear life. And I think everyone's just crossing their fingers and praying that either Anthony Edwards and or Karl-Anthony Towns can get back in time. Maybe just and we'll do like the schedule update and the playoff picture update, but you might have to take more lumps on your schedule. Knicks on the road Monday, right? Like there's some just really tough games. And just kind of pray that you can go on a run in the last 4 games, because you get Spurs in there, you get some teams in there at the end. So let's start with, Anthony Edwards. Here's the update as we record this on a Sunday afternoon. Shams came out late this morning, Central Time, and said good news. And this, by the way, is the most comprehensive Timberwolves injury update that we have seen all season, and it's not from the Timberwolves. I love how last week too they put out like, okay, we officially have a Karl-Anthony Towns injury update for you all. Okay, here it is, everyone. Click on the link. Go to the website and see it. And it was like he's going through basketball things and may be back sometime in a few weeks. Stop bothering us, right?
Yep.
So here's the Shams update on Anthony Edwards. Timberwolves All-Star Anthony Edwards has exited a walking boot. So he's out of the walking boot, and he's moving around more as the swelling decreases in the ankle sprain he suffered on Friday, according to sources. Anthony Edwards is expected to be evaluated day-to-day on a return. He's currently listed as questionable, by the way, for the Knicks game on Monday night. So that's where things stand with him. On the Cat front, he's kind of practicing. He's doing more things, but then he sends out over the weekend this weird cryptic tweet. It's a picture of a lion putting its paw up on a cage, like a caged lion. And the tweet is, me waiting to get cleared to play. Let the kid do what he loves. It's like a shot at the organization. Dude, it's been 16 weeks. There's been some steam that it's the other way around. And so because no one's being maybe this is Cat trying to say, hey, I wanted to play for a month, but the medical staff isn't letting me. So you have Cat versus organization, Anthony Edwards versus genetics. I don't know, like how quickly can he get back? And the Wolves versus the schedule and the rest of the tightly knit Western Conference. So there's your landscape, Kyle.
So yeah, I didn't miss much on vacation, I guess. We've danced around this, I think, since Karl went down. And there's just a lot to kind of unearth, and I do want to get your opinion on some of this stuff. Like, at some point, this is like a really, really big issue. And it's not. I do want to be honest, it's not Timberwolves specific, but we're just so ingrained in it that we feel like it is. But the lack of transparency is so weird. Like to the Ant thing, because we started with Ant. He sprains his ankle. I don't think he's had a lot of injuries in his young career. Because when he went down, I thought he broke his foot. I mean, you could pick up audible screams on the mic, and it was like, oh no. And he gets carried off the court, and then he's deemed, and this is my issue, he's deemed questionable to return. There's no way he's coming back, right? And then
unless it's a Paul Pierce situation, and it was really more of a digestive problem he was trying to mask or something.
So then he's out, and it's like, okay, that's totally fine. And the bummer about that, and we'll talk about officiating too, but like they win that game against the Bulls by double digits if Ant stays around. I mean, they were kind of cruising at that point. And then on the Ant specific thing, it's like, okay, then he's in a boot. He comes back out to the sideline or whatever. And then it's like he's deemed questionable for the Toronto game, which is less than 22 hours from when they finish the Bulls game, right? Because they go into overtime or double overtime. Mm-hmm. And it's like, dude, so he's in a boot, but you're going to rule him questionable. And then Chris Hine, who was traveling and covering all the games and does a great job at the Star Tribune, was like, yeah, but he's having further testing on Sunday. So it's like, okay, well, some of that doesn't add up. How is he questionable, but he's going to have more testing on Sunday? That would mean that he's not going to play. So at some point, like the team, or I don't know, even the league too, I just don't understand what really goes into what is the benefit of making him questionable. Like he was never going to play. Why even try to rush him back? Like you said, maybe take, as we look at the schedule, there's 10 games left. Maybe just take a lump. Like you said, you're going to lose in Toronto. You're 10-point underdogs anyway. But the lack of transparency with the injuries, I think Ant rolled his ankle really bad. I think Karl had a severe calf strain or whatever that should have never had a 4 to 6 week timeline, whatever. But you not being upfront and just like the fact that they had that day, Phil, where there's like big announcement, PR, press release, here's our Karl-Anthony Towns update, and it was not an update. It was just like, hey, he's alive. It's like, well, we know he's alive, but like, is he going to come back? It just fosters, especially in 2023, conspiracy theories that you can just nip in the bud if you're just transparent and honest. Like, hey, he's just not ready yet. Just, people hold press conferences for the dumbest things in the world. Just like put Karl and Tim on a live stream of Track the Pack and be like, yeah, Karl's working hard. He's just not back yet. Like the shadiness and the inability, it just shows you, and the Timberwolves are really bad at this, but so are other teams. It shows you just the lack of like the gap that exists between the media and the fans and the teams. They're so isolated. Like someone should know inside that building, we're really bad at this, and we need to be more upfront.
It reminds me a lot. I've mentioned this before on the show. I used to be a baseball beat writer, and I covered the Twins from 2010 through 2014, somewhere in that period. And 2011, if you remember, Joe Mauer had some sort of something that was kind of hobbling him, I think, in spring training, and then a few games into the season. It was in Tampa Bay when this officially went down, but he was just like not physically right to start the season, but he also had knee surgery like a year and a half before, but the team wasn't really being super upfront about what was it, his knee, is it his back? He's just kind of banged up is what and they would call it general soreness. He's got general soreness. People were wearing number 7 general soreness jerseys to Target Field to mock him that season, but they wind up deeming it bilateral leg weakness, and they shut him down. They put him on at the time it was called the disabled list. Now it's called the injured list. And he sat out for months. I don't think he came back until like after the All-Star break. And they just continued to call it bilateral leg weakness. Now I had heard that, so Bill Smith was the Twins GM at the time, that they didn't want like the public to know exactly what was happening, I've always heard that there was some other issue with him, some medical issue or something that's never really hit the light of day. And so they didn't really want to be transparent. So they just literally made up a name or a term for it. And it was written on a Post-it note before, someone talked to the media in Tampa Bay. But I bring this up to say that it looks like Karl-Anthony Towns, who definitely has rabbit ears when it comes to what people are saying about him in the media, on social
100%.
media. Like
100%.
he soaks that stuff in. I think he's starting to hear some of the fans, hey, dude, it's been 16 weeks. Where are you, guy? This team is a half game up on the 12 seed right now. This team needs you back. Why are you not on the court right now? Why is this such a mystery? And I think this tweet for him was his way of saying, I want to go. Take take this however you want to, but it's not me that's preventing me from being on the court. And I think if I'm Karl-Anthony Towns from a perception standpoint, I probably do fight back here. And I don't know. I don't know. Maybe the team would tell you, because I know Doogie's reported on this too, that, and there's not a lot of information to go off of because they are ironclad lockdown, that maybe it's been the other way around at times, that maybe it's kind of Karl controlling the rehab process. So where the truth lies, I don't know, but they're definitely Bill Belichick New England style in terms of their lockdown for information.
And oh God, you're going to get me started. And I'm probably naive enough to think, I think Karl just is really injured and now is probably thinking that he's ready to get back out there.
And one more thing, just sorry to cut you off of this, to put a bow on this is like one of the points I was trying to make is Joe Mauer looked really, really bad because he failed to come forward and say, hey, even if it's kind of a lie, right? Mm-hmm. It's my knee. My knee hurts. My back hurts. Bilateral leg weakness, calf strain. Like these are sort of, people are like, a calf strain, dude. Okay, you missed 2 months, 3 months, 4 months with a calf strain. So if there was just a little bit more transparency about just how bad the injury was, I know for a fact that Joe Mauer grinded through so much pain as a catcher, and he never talked about it to the media, and he never came out to correct the bilateral leg weakness thing. So, quite frankly, people think Karl-Anthony Towns is a wuss. Based on his postseason behavior, based on him missing 4 months with a calf strain, right? Like, people think the team is desperately throwing, like, hey, dude, we please throw us some sort of a safety harness here and reel us back in. And he's standing there like, I can't, I'm sorry. Like, people think he's a wuss, right? Let's just say it.
So this thing, I shouldn't have had caffeine. The Wolves do have a good, and this is the conspiracy stuff. The Wolves have a good medical staff, even though we all make fun of it. Like, one of their head medical people is like, I think he's done Team USA stuff. Like, they have smart people. So if at the end of all this, there is scientific proof that says if we rush Karl back, he could risk a Kevin Durant. He could risk tearing his Achilles. If that's real, then I am totally in support of how the franchise has handled managing Karl's injury. But just be upfront with it. And the thing that drives me crazy, and I have been, as many have, pretty upfront sometimes about my frustration about, you went big game hunting last year, not only on your roster, but in your front office. And you brought in this, Tim Connolly to be this top 5 executive and stuff, and you're paying him all this money. And the transparency there, he is an ironclad person. I know that he has, his whole front office is there's not a lot of leaks coming out of there. Mm-hmm. But when things were really bad, he made a couple of comments, maybe it was to Doogie, or just kind of publicly like, blame me. Like, put it on me. Like, I made this move. If the team struggles, put it on me. Don't blame the players. Don't blame Finch. Put it on me. This would be a great time for him to just come out and be like, Karl thinks he's ready to go. He's been looking great in, the one-on-ones or the one-on-zeros or whatever, but I'm not ready to put him in yet. Mm-hmm. I want to make sure he's 110% because we believe, and our staff believes, that there's a little risk there that he could re-injure himself further, and then do all the BS stuff that presidents say, like, we believe Karl at 26, 27 years old is a cornerstone of this franchise, and we're not worried about 2 weeks of basketball. We're worried about 2 more years.
but he might not. That might not be his truth.
Right, exactly. It's just like someone should fall on the sword, because it seems like everyone, again, the fact that you're just not, even if this is all, here's my point. If everyone is innocent here, and Karl was really hurt, but he wants to play, and the Wolves are precautious about him, and they don't want to ruin him long term, whether it be because he's a cornerstone of the franchise for the next 7 years, or he's an elite trade piece, whatever that their thinking may be. Just say it. Just say it, because when you don't, especially now with how many fans this team has kind of dug up from the grave after having a little bit of success last year, it just leads to so many dumb things. And then it leads to, like you said, Karl, no matter what those guys say, it's not just Karl, it's a lot of those guys, they are so online, mm-hmm. and he's heard it, and that's why he posted a lion at, Joe Exotic's dirt, or, Lion Camp. It's like he's trying to let people know, like, I want to play, and it's like, God, you're paying your president $10 million. He should be out in front of that and be like, listen, this is my decision, and when we're ready to put Karl in, we'll put him in. So it's just been handled terribly.
And I think ordinarily there would be kind of a bailout option here for a franchise where, okay, what are there, 10 games left? 1, 2, 3, 4, 10. There's 10 games left. you're clinging to the ninth. You're tied for the 9th/10th seed right now. You're a half game up from the Lakers, and you're not like winning the title or doing anything meaningful. And is it worth really jeopardizing putting Ant out there at 70% and he rolls his ankle again, and now he's got chronic ankle problems? Is it worth like rushing Cat back and having a Kevin Durant situation? I don't think you're rushing him back after 4 months at this point, but I am also not a doctor, nor did I stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. But what I'm saying is, like, in most normal cases, there would be a fallback option to just tank, right?
Right, exactly.
Okay, well, maybe it wouldn't be the worst thing if we missed the play-in, because then we could just get another asset, get a shot at maybe the number 1 overall pick in the lottery. And would it really be that bad to just take a deep breath, reassess kind of a train wreck season, and then move forward with a healthy Anthony Edwards and whatever else you want to do this summer? And the problem is, obviously, the Wolves don't own their first-round pick. Utah owns the Wolves' first-round pick. So really, there's only that's the desperation that I feel here on behalf of the franchise in these last 10 games, is that there's really only one way to salvage this season. At minimum, get into the play-in. Mm-hmm. And I think a step beyond that, because I don't want to lower the bar that we set like 2 weeks ago on this show when they had rolled off a couple wins. I think you need to get in the play-in, win your play-in games, and then do some damage, or at least get back to the level you were at last year, where you're fighting against a good team for 6 games in the first round, so it feels like you didn't take a huge step back. Mm-hmm. Dude, missing the play-in is a real possibility for this team right now based on their injury situation. And it is I don't know what the word is, because this is a franchise full of like just awful sort of bottom-feeding moments, but it would just be an unthinkable, horrible thing to happen for this basketball team. I think for everyone involved, like from Tim Connolly all the way down to Anthony Edwards, to feel that type of failure would be, oof, even for the Timberwolves, man, that would be quite the epic situation.
And just a quick interjection on like the schedule. It hasn't been a great week, right? I think we've cleared that up. But if you do look at their schedule, they have 10 games left. I think 5 or 6 are on the road, 4 at home. But they finish with at home against the Lakers, which will be a big game, but you're at home. And then against the Blazers, the Nets, the Spurs, and the Pelicans have fallen off the face of the earth. You also have the Hawks mixed in there somewhere too. So I'm still very bullish on, like you said, they need to find a way to salvage, 5-5 over these next 10 games. I think 5-5 will probably get you in, because
get you the play in for sure.
Yeah,
well, not for, I wouldn't say for sure, but it gives you a shot, I guess.
Right. I guess to put a bow on, Ant's injury and the way that that was reported. Because then it was weird too, right? Because I know Dane and Chris were both in Chicago for that game, and then they obviously went to Toronto, but Finch had a line or something in his pregame stuff where it was like, yeah, I think he's out indefinitely. Well, when you're out indefinitely, that to me is like, at least a week. And then it's just like now today with the sham stuff, this reporting has been so weird. And I have been doing this with you and for years as just a fan first. And the fans, my biggest gripe is just the fans deserve better, because they didn't lower ticket prices for next year by any means, right? They're not offering free concession stands for every extra game that Karl misses, right? Like, you need to be a little upfront with some of this stuff. And if you don't want to, no one's forcing you to, but if you want to just be so isolated from the fan base and the media and any sort of reality, then you're going to get stuff like this. Because one of my favorite things to do right now as a degenerate sicko is to just see every time the Wolves tweet out their injury report, because there's 52,000 quote tweets on it, and it's just, they're getting ripped to shreds. And it's because you just didn't try to cut this off, 2 months ago and just be upfront and honest and transparent. Some of these teams do it way better than others. The Warriors anytime Steph Curry has, fake meat, they tweet about it all the time. So it's like, at least give us something. And then to do what they did this week was just, it's tough. So we'll see what happens this week. They announced they put up their injury report today for the Knicks game, and Gobert is questionable, but he'll play. Ant's questionable, so
but Cat's out. Play, but Cat's listed as out. Yeah. Let's this is a good segue. Let's do our Western Conference playoff picture update here, going into the last 10 games. So it's it's a problem, but it's so crazy, and that still from the 4-seed Suns, who don't have Kevin Durant down the stretch, all the way down to the let's see, the 4 seed Suns all the way down to, let's call it the 11, 12, the 12 seed Pelicans. 4.5 games separate the Pelicans from the Suns. And you see how the Pelicans have dropped off a cliff. They have, but the Pelicans are just 1 game behind the Wolves right now. And the Wolves could lose any of these games on their schedule, as they've proven all season.
Yep.
They could also win any of these games on their schedule, as they've proven. I think the Wolves actually have they have one of the best records against winning teams in the Western Conference this year. But then they also have just an absurd amount of losses against some of the worst teams in the league. So the Wolves are tied for the 9/10 seed with, of course, Utah. They're a half game back of the Thunder for the 8th spot, a full game back of the Warriors for the 7, and only a game and a half back of the Mavericks for the 6. So that's the crazy thing, dude. Like, you could still, I don't think you're going to rattle off a bunch of wins without Anthony Edwards, but you're still looking like, God, is the 6 seeds, if you could just win like 3 of the next 4 or something and the Mavericks lose. So that's kind of, but beneath you, again, you got the Lakers are a half game back. The Pelicans are a game back. I think the Blazers are cooked at this point. 8 games under 500, 5 straight losses, but they're only 3 games back of the play-in right now. So it's so hard to figure out what's going to happen.
They'll never do this because they have Tom Thibodeau kind of thought process about playing guys, which again, I'm not going to complain about because I've also been the guy that's like, there's way too much load management in Adam Silver's poorly run NBA these days. But then if you play the Knicks on Monday and then you play the Hawks at home on Wednesday, and then you have a weird 3 days off before you go on like your kind of last little road trip, Golden State, Sacramento, Phoenix. I would just sit everyone against the Knicks. That, to me, the Knicks game is like the last really tough one. I mean, the Kings obviously in Sacramento is tough too, but you can, this season, and this isn't optimistic, it's just reality. It's very salvageable, and there's still a lot of winnable games on the, I mean, beating the Lakers is massive because they go down 1 and you go up 1. So you still have a lot of flexibility over these next 10 games, but who's going to play, right? I mean, we saw in Toronto that that's part of the, importance of, can we get Karl back? It's like when you don't have Ant out there, you can, stay in the ring for 8 rounds, but then you're done after the 9th or 10th. Like, you just can't beat teams without any firepower.
Yeah.
So it's going to be, and, for the people that were complaining about the losses in January and February, and us too, like, this should be the learning lesson, I guess. Maybe, hopefully, fingers crossed for the young guys that, like, yeah, you know what, man, maybe you shouldn't take those easy games, not seriously, because they add up now. It's like, if you would have given yourself 3 more wins in January or 3 more wins in February, you could have afforded to go 1-5 in your last 6. Because,
yeah, dude.
Again, if you don't have Ant and you don't have Karl, put all the other stuff aside. Like, I don't have any expectations for you. Those are 2 top 40 players in the league. I know they have Rudy still, but he's just not a needle mover offensively. So now it's okay to lose because you don't have your 2 best players, but simultaneously you can't be losing because then you're going to fall out of the race. So
yeah. So do you think 10 games left? Do you think Karl-Anthony Towns plays in the regular season?
100%. That's I do. And that's I do.
So in terms of calendar, I'm not 100%. I'm not 100%. So in terms of calendar time, so 10 games left. Let me see here. Let me go back to the calendar schedule. So they get the Knicks tomorrow night. So that's the first of the 10 games. Their last game of the regular season, and they have a back-to-back to finish the season. So it's kind of a weird schedule in that they get 4 days off between the third to last game and the second to last game, and they play a back-to-back to wrap the season. But that's on April 9th. So they basically have 3? So it's 3 weeks left.
They have 3 weeks from the time we're recording this. If he has never come back during that time, it could get real messy. Like you were saying, someone's got to maybe fall on the sword, because if the dude's saying now that he's like let the line out of the cage, and you're gonna keep him caged up for 3 more weeks during, like you said, these are meaningful games that you need to win, and you forced yourself into this position by trading all the draft capital you did and trading all the important depth players you did. So that's the only reason. I mean, my hot take would be that he gets upgraded to like doubtful or questionable for the Atlanta game, and then that kind of gives you a little tease, and then they have, again, 3 more days off before they go to Golden State.
So the Golden State would be a week from today.
Today,
as we record this, right?
I mean, you could also say too that if he doesn't play in the Golden State game, then what's the point? Because then it's just like, well, how many more games we have left, and what are you going to do with the guy?
You might have found the date here. So he's probably not playing a back-to-back. So they play a Golden State Sacramento back-to-back next weekend, Sunday into Monday, or both road games. And then their only other back-to-back is the one to finish the season. So there's no way he starts by playing back-to-back games. So I could see either playing the Golden State game and then sitting the Sacramento game, or they sit him for Golden State and they play him for like a jolt on the second night of a back-to-back in Sacramento. Or they just avoid that altogether and they debut him in Phoenix on ESPN on Wednesday, March 29th. But then it's like, God, there's 6 games. These guys have played the last 6 games as you're 3-4 games under 500, desperately trying to. It's just
Don't you think if we've now gone back to the scientific part of like he's medically cleared and there is no risk? I mean, this is the Finch style, right?
What's the difference between playing him on Wednesday this week against Atlanta or you wait a week against Phoenix?
I don't know.
It's been 4 months of him sitting out and rehabbing. Does the risk decrease by a lot if he sits one more week? That's why I'm confused here.
I'll leave that for the Twitter doctors that send me Google screenshots of calf injuries that they've looked up, or like on the ant thing too. I had people tweeting at me like, "Well, I rolled my ankle at LA Fitness." It's like, well, that's great, but you're 5'6" and $130. Like, I don't really care what your recovery time was against Anthony Edwards, but no, I get your point. Like, I don't know what we're risking anymore at this point. I mean, you've made it pretty apparent that we're like 16 weeks into this, 4 months into this thing, but I just think I think if Finch could get Karl back for the game against the Pelicans, the last game of the season, he would do it. Because he's like, we want to try to win as many games as possible and have as much firepower. But again, why won't just someone come out and be honest and just say it, right? Tim Connolly, this is kind of one of your job descriptions, is to be like, we're either not going to play him because we're the bad guys and we're going to take the egg on our face because we don't want to risk hurting him. Or just tell us something. But
right, then be the bad guys publicly now, like you said.
Exactly.
Come out, especially now that he tweeted that. Like, imagine how much this had to be boiling up for him to actually send. He's literally just taking a shot at the organization. He's saying, let me do what I want to do, right? So the organization has to come out at some point and either, hey, we love Cat, we're doing what's best for Cat, but we've already hashed that out. I do have a take on officiating that you may disagree with that I want to run by you here. Let's see. But a shout out to our friends over at mydullknives.com. Our friends at Vivront. So I actually stopped by, got to hang out with Joseph in the actual shop in Wayzata, and It was amazing. So not only do they do professional knife sharpening to eliminate the shame of walking around in public, people branding you as a guy or a gal with dull knives. You don't want to be hosting in-laws, hosting gatherings. All right, we're going to slice up a charcuterie board. We're going to make some, vegetable salads, whatever it is. And then all of a sudden you're squishing your tomato and, Aunt Lucy's got, she's got burning in her left eye. Okay. He taught me, it's amazing. There's so many things beyond just the knife sharpening too. One of them being they have classes to sort of teach you how to be better in the kitchen. He taught me 3 different grips on a knife. Like, I only know the standard one where you like hold the knife handle, right? He's like, try these other 2. These are literally what professionals do in a kitchen. And he let me hold some very, very nice Japanese knives that I have never been in the company of. So it's kind of opened up a whole world of interest for me. But here's what happens. You go to mydullknives.com. The folks at Vivront will send you a safe and professional mail kit. You send your knives on a little vacation. They'll get sharpened up in just a couple days. They send them back to you, and your confidence gets boosted in the kitchen. mydullknives.com. That's mydullknives.com. So, okay. Especially the Bulls game the other night. In fact, wasn't there like someone put together a list? I think it was Timberwolves Muse on Twitter, and I retweeted this over the weekend of just all the mistakes. It looked like the game was fixed at certain times, and I will start my takeoff by telling you, I think there's been some really poorly officiated Timberwolves games this year. I think there's nights where they absolutely have gotten a bad whistle. And I think you've seen a couple of them in the last 10 days. So I will grant you that. Our friend Alan Horton sent this tweet out. This might have been after the Bulls game or sometime like Friday or Saturday, somewhere in there. The Timberwolves lead the NBA in technical fouls with 54. The Timberwolves lead the NBA in flagrant fouls with 10. And the Timberwolves lead the NBA in ejections with 8. Again, are there nights where you're getting a bad whistle? Absolutely. Do I think Anthony Edwards deserves a few more trips to the free throw line here and there? Yes, I do. But when you lead the NBA in all three of those categories, you lead the NBA in technicals, flagrants, and ejections. To me, that's a look in the mirror issue more than the league is screwing us and the league just wants to pile on the Timberwolves. The officials have it out for the Timberwolves every single night more than any other NBA team. I don't think that's the case. I think this is showing you, again, techs, flagrants, ejections. And then think about on the other side, like on the actual basketball side, how many times they lose their mind late in a game where they're up by double digits, right? They can't close out games. To me, this just sort of solidifies the fact that the Wolves, even though they've added some veterans, are one of the most immature, fragile teams in the NBA. That's my take on it.
We're not going to see eye to eye on this one. But I do see your point, and I think it's really chicken and egg, and that's why I think this is actually a fun conversation because I think we can both feel right about it. But I've also seen some weird takes too, where it's like, well, you know, the Wolves need to develop a stronger rapport and a stronger relationship with the officials. Yeah, you do that when you're trying to raise money at a college from alumni, not with people whose job description is to be impartial. I don't need to develop I don't need to bring chocolate boxes for Ed Malloy when his job is to call the game fairly. I'm with you on some of that stuff. Like I said, when you start listing all of those things, it's like, okay.
By the way, these numbers are without Karl-Anthony Towns,
right?
Who would only add to he would mostly add to the technical fouls. I think. I don't think he's been ejected a few times, but like, you know, but he's actually a good example because I agree. Ed Malloy, do your job, and Scott Foster, like do your job. But the way that Karl-Anthony Towns, and again, he's not really part of this necessarily because the last time he played was around Thanksgiving, but the way that he goes about gesticulating and pouting and crying, sort of, you know, he's this basketball victim, it seems like, on a regular basis compared to other top sort of all NBA caliber players. I think that type of attitude prevents you from getting better whistles because there is a human element to it, despite the fact that you're right. Ed Malloy, do your job, like get rid of the human element, but there is a human element to it.
I tweeted this out, but there was a prime example that would make me feel good about my side of this, even though you just listed way more cool facts that make me look wrong. But in that Bulls game, there's like a minute left in overtime. I think the Wolves are up 3. DeMar DeRozan gets doubled and drives into the lane, and Rudy Gobert gives him one of the softest wrist slaps in the world. It is, you can't actually see it on the replay. Slight wrist slap. They give DeRozan a long continuation, hits the bucket. Gobert fouls out. DeRozan never misses free throws. Tie game. Next possession, Jaden comes down, gets grabbed by DeMar DeRozan, same wrist slap, then drives into the lane, and Nikola Vucevic literally stabs him with a rusty slice of deep dish pizza. Jaden falls to the ground. No and one. No. So those are the plays where it's like, you literally, the play before, got a really soft call that fouled out a guy that was a game-changing play, and then the next play, and it does go back to the immaturity thing. Like, young guys don't usually get whistles, right? Like, it's usually the proven guys, the veteran guys. I don't know why that is, but that's how the NBA works. But you said it shows that the Wolves are immature, and I agree with that, and I have no pushback, but it does then spiral me back to what I said in January. I really like, this is just me, I really like Chris Finch. I really like him. I think he's been trying to, you know, cook with as much as he could this year. His all-NBA center has missed 52 games or whatever by this point. But I think at this point, you need to get thrown out. I know I've joked about it before, but, like, I don't think those stats that you ripped off, Phil, include coaches. And I don't think they'd be as high as they are if Finch took the sword for once and just said, no, like, I can't let Ant get kicked out. I can't. Kyle Anderson's getting kicked out of games, man. He is one of the most... You know, he doesn't have a lot of ejections on his resume. Mike Conley was the closest he's been to a technical in his entire career in that Bulls game. So I think we're both right on some level. I just, you know, at some point, maybe you get out in front of it and do the thing where you slam the clipboard and protect your players.
Yeah.
Maybe that would get you more respect because, like you said, Ant's not going to get it. You know, Jaden's not going to get it. The players aren't going to really. Rudy Gobert's gotten a bad whistle his whole kind of career. So someone else needs to kind of look out for those guys and protect them, even if it doesn't work. It's worth a shot at this point, and for whatever reason, Finch just doesn't want to do it.
Yeah, and I'm a little more lukewarm at this point on Finch. I think he's a good coach. I think he's an excellent lead assistant, and I think the jury is out on whether he's a long-term top 8, top 10 head coach in the NBA. He's shown at times like he takes over and implements an offense sort of on the fly. A couple years back for Ryan, I think coaching that group last year to 46 wins or whatever it was, and a near upset in the first round of the playoffs. I think you've seen some flashes there. But if I were to tell you, and like, let's just separate the Timberwolves from this. If I were to say, all right, let me just pick a team here. Who's a team that's kind of borderline in terms of the perception? Like a team that's kind of on, I would say like the Clippers the Clippers are well coached. Let's take a team like Oklahoma City, or just take a team that's kind of on the rise, or the Pelicans or somebody, right? If I were to tell you, hey, that team, the Chicago Bulls, clinging for their play-in lives, have the most technicals, the most flagrants, and the most ejections in the NBA. I think people would say, boy, if that team was just more disciplined, they would have a better record, or they would be just in a better place, in the standings. I don't think people would say, boy, that team's getting screwed by the officials. I just pulled up the NFL too here. This is kind of fascinating. The 3 teams that have the most penalties taken from last season, and you're a big NFL guy, I know you are.
Adam Thielen to the Panthers.
Saw that tonight, yeah. Pat McAfee broke that news. Interesting. As Caitlin Thielen said, on to better things, which is the Carolina Panthers, apparently.
5-12 Panthers. Anyway, back to
the 3 most penalized teams in the NFL last year were the Arizona Cardinals, the Denver Broncos, and the Las Vegas Raiders. So the Cardinals, you could say, well, man, they're just getting a bad whistle from the officials. Or you could say what I think is true. The Broncos are on this list. They were one of the worst coach teams in the NFL. Nathaniel Hackett, train wreck head coach. Arizona Cardinals, train wreck organization where the GM and the coach had to literally build into the quarterback's contract time to study film and do your job. And then the Raiders have always been one of the most penalized teams in the NFL. I don't know what it is about the Raiders, but they're just always penalized. I think there's a little of both. The Timberwolves get screwed a little bit here and there, but there's just, whether it's the coach or whether it's some of the like Anthony Edwards at some point, you can't expect to be a top-end NBA team and lead the league in techs, flagrants, and ejections. To me, those are symptoms of something beyond getting screwed. They're symptoms to me of immaturity or just lack of understanding how to keep your composure in big situations. So I guess that's my take on it.
I'm a Law and Order SVU guy, and you're doing a much better job of winning this case because you're using actual facts and stuff. But I also want to say again, as I put my fan hat on, we have watched every game so far of these 72 games. We've done a lot of podcasts. I remember a lot of weird stats and facts. I honestly do not really remember the Wolves getting a good whistle in a game. And as we talk about Alan Horton and his good tweet, I have him up right here. We haven't even talked about the Celtics game, where
that might have been the worst of the bunch. Yeah,
and Britt Robson I think came out and said that was the worst officiated game he's ever seen, and he's went to 1,000 of these games. Right, there was the jump ball with Grant Williams. There was the Celtics head coach in the Wolves seats. Right, he was closer to the action than Finch was, and it was down by Finch. So it is, again, this is just me being the petty, immature 34-year-old that I am. But it's just, if you keep kicking me, and then I strike back after the 10th kick, I can't always be claimed that I have a short fuse or I'm the bad guy. Because there are moments, it's that Celtics game, there's no more Tim Donaghy in the league. I don't think we're at those levels. But there were just multiple things in that game that not only did you compound a mistake on the tip, but then in the pool report after the game, we didn't see the coach. You didn't see the coach? He was at the free throw line. So then it's and then after that, they kind of lose the game, and then that's when you get Ant and Kyle thrown out. And it's those stats add to what Phil just said. And again, Phil is right in this, but those stats don't exist if you just call the game impartially and you get the plays right. I know we're never going to get them 100% right, but I feel from a Wolves fan's perspective, they're not even getting them 60% right.
Yeah.
And that's what the frustrating part is.
And maybe I'm being unrealistic in that I just want all of my athletes to be stoic, to never react to any sort of external circumstances. I think I brought this up on the podcast where I did a podcast series 7 years ago called How to Live a Cool Life. And I talked to people in different walks of business and sports and people kind of at the top of their games it was like a little 2-season situation when Hubbard first formed a partnership with Podcast One. I think you can still find these out there somewhere. I don't know if the podcast feed still exists, but one of the interviews I did was with George Mumford, who was the longtime with Chicago and Los Angeles. He was the longtime mental coach for Phil Jackson's teams. So he was like the mental coach for Kobe Bryant's Lakers and for Michael Jordan's Bulls and, all the other, like the Steve Kerrs and all these players. And he worked with these teams hands-on throughout the season. And so I asked him, I said, how do players at the top of their game in the NBA, how do they waltz into the Rose Garden in Portland 20 years ago, or some of these raucous environments? It's a playoff game. You're in Sacramento was it Arco? What was that arena called back in the day? And they're rattling bells and stuff, and it's game 6, game 7. How do these guys how do they do their job without their heart pounding through their neck?
Right. I've always thought that too. Yeah.
I'll never forget his response, because they're all elite, but they're all humans, right? You have 20,000 people screaming. It's a pressure free throw. How do you knock that down with regularity? And he said, it's all about creating space between the mechanism and the response. The mechanism being the thing that's happening to you, or the thing that's happening environmentally, whatever the mechanism is, or somebody says something to you, right? A fan in the front row, or it could be in your everyday life. You're late for work. Someone honks at you, right? There's any number of things that could happen, the mechanism, and then your response to it. He says the best athletes, and really you could say the best peak performers in anything, could put a little pause or a little beat, a little breath between the thing that happens and then your reaction to it. And I find that these Timberwolves sometimes have a hard time with that space between the mechanism and the response. The mechanism can be unfair sometimes. And if it were up to me, I would want all of my athletes to be stoic robots that never, ever sabotage with technical fouls or rejections. But that's not reality.
We should have just an ongoing segment called Dr. Phil, where you just try to make me a better person. Because, my dad turned 70 this last week, and he actually set the Theige age record. No one's ever gotten to 70, so shout out to him. But
wow. Odds are against you then, Kyle.
Yeah,
enjoy.
If the Wolves keep getting this whistle, I'm not going to make it to 40. But he has always been like, I think he is the nicest guy in the world. He's my best friend, and he never reacts. And I think he would like it if I didn't react. I get that from my mom's side a little bit, but I think it's chicken and egg. Again, like I said at the top, every stat that Phil just had was right. And it's true. And the Wolves lead in all these ugly categories. I just know that in that Celtics game, for example, just one game that I thought they played really good basketball and they could have won. And then the way we talk about the standings would be different. The way we talk about all these injuries would be different. Mm-hmm. They got 4 technicals, a flagrant foul that was weak. Jaylen Brown confronted Rudy Gobert. I mean, there was just a lot of things that, they get 2 ejections with 2 seconds left in the game that's over that just kind of pile on to the stats that you read. But you're right. At the end of the day, I think you got to be way more mature. I think that's what Phil's trying to say, and Phil is 100% right. The Wolves just are still immature, whether it be their young guys who you kind of give a pass to, or, I love him, but Taurean Prince, who kind of just lost the game for him by himself in that Bulls game by not, you're a vet on this team the guys look up to. You're the one that at media day was, or, at the end of the season last year, all the guys were like, yeah, TP would bring us in to his hotel room and just talk to us about life and ball. It's like, dude, you can't make that turnover when you're up 2 and there's no shot clock left. Like, you got to hold the ball and shoot the free throws. So it's just another, characteristic of this team still feeling the pressure of just lack of success over, these last 6 months, these last 6 years, these last 33 years. But I do think that there are moments in time where it's just after a while, it's like someone's got to stand up for you. I mean, the Fred VanVleet viral video from a few weeks ago where he was like, I'm just going to take the fine. But then he literally called the ref's name out and just was like, he was bleeping terrible tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, man. Like, that might have helped them. They've been on a little winning streak since then. Like, maybe it's one of those things, and maybe it has to come from higher up. Maybe it has to come from Tim Connolly. Like, I don't know. But the Wolves are just not handling a lot of things well right now. And it's showing in their record and their performance and everything else from top to bottom.
And so our recommendation here as we wrap this episode of Flagrant Howls in a very Zen-like way is the last 10 games could be tumultuous. There might be some negative mechanisms, as you would call them if you're George Mumford. It's on us following this team to put some space between the mechanism and the response.
A famous poet once said, "Never too high, never too low." That was actually D'Angelo Russell, but he was onto something. So.
Yeah. And with the Wolves, there's always another level of low, and we'll see if
Never
we'll see
gets
if they
too
can
high,
hit
but
it.
always gets pretty low.
So, all right, well, we'll shut up for now with our philosophical ramblings here, and we'll probably hit you. We've promised kind of 2 episodes a week, and we haven't stuck to that as much as we wanted to here, but we will definitely, as we wind down the stretch here.
I'm back.
So I'm traveling Monday through Wednesday, and then we're both likely grounded for the stretch run in the regular season, and ideally play in and playoffs, but it's kind of up to them at this point.
Yeah,
the schedule gods.
I really do appreciate people listening to this. Phil has been, obviously, I've said this before, but a good friend and a better mentor, and has shown me that sometimes it's important to just hang out with family. So I know I've been saying the T word a lot, and some people don't like that, but traveling, vacations, but back, and hopefully to kind of grind out as much content as possible over these next 10 games, whichever way they go. They could go 10-0. We have lost the bid for 50. I've kind of wanted to pour one out for that, but
well, technically we never said. No, we did say regular season. Yeah, that's true.
Oh, I should.
I was going to go hunt for some preseason wins plus a couple maybe play-in wins or something.
But yeah, like I said, it has, this last week has turned. I mean, Alan Horn had another one too, where it was like a week ago or something. They were riding high, right? And now you've fallen really low. But if you can get Ant back, and God forbid you let the line out of the cage, there are still very winnable games on your schedule. That month of April, those 4 final games are against teams that have no business wanting to play basketball. And it's a gut check time for you, because you have performed terribly in those games when your opponent doesn't care. And now, it's meaningful. You should care. You should try to, salvage this. And I still believe what you said in February. If this team makes it in, they're going to be a weird team for other teams to play, because then the pressure's on the Nuggets, the pressure's on the Kings, the pressure's on the Warriors. So we'll see if they get there, but they have stumbled to the finish line for sure.
Yeah. All right, that's a wrap here on Flagrant Howls. If you guys could, if you haven't already, please give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and a positive review if you could, and click the subscribe button and the like button on the Score North YouTube channel. He's Kyle. I'm Phil. We'll see you guys next time.